Great. Welcome back after lunch. There might be a few people coming in afterwards, but I think we should make a start in the interest of time. My name's Ingrid Slade. I'm a Wellcome Trust Research Fellow here at the Ethics Centre, Ethox Centre, which is a bioethics centre here at the University of Oxford. And it's a great pleasure to chair this first session this afternoon. So we're going to make a slight move this afternoon from one overarching, or what some have termed orchestrating label, that of personalised medicine, to another, or at least to touch on another, and that is of big data. So the sharing of patient information, including genomic data, is a key component of the diagnosis and management of patients. That process of data sharing is complicated, but it offers many potential benefits. Some of those benefits might include improved, faster diagnosis, so reducing what's called the diagnostic odyssey for patients, perhaps improved, more tailored treatments, as we've heard about this morning, in an era of personalised medicine, and potentially cost savings and increased efficiency within the NHS if harnessed effectively within that system. But it's also important to note that data collection and sharing not only benefits individual patients, but also provides important insights into public or population health. Data sharing can be said to contribute to both the individual and the public good. However, in practice, there are inconsistent sharing practices across healthcare and research institutions, causing significant differences in and compromising the quality of patient care. There are existing national and international databases that are not interacting sufficiently to make the progress required. And whilst there are unresolved logistical, practical and technical challenges, there is an important underlying dimension in this area which concerns both the values and motivations of individuals in the sharing of their data for the optimisation of their own treatment, but also to contribute to the public good. As today's programme states, the combination of self-interest and compassion for present neighbours and future generations, which inspires data sharing, is liable to be undermined by fears of data loss and trust violation. So in consideration of this balance, we're going to hear from 3 expert perspectives over the next hour and then open up for discussion to the floor. So firstly, we have Professor Mark Lawler, who is Chair in Translational Cancer Genomics at the Centre for Cancer Research, Queen's University, Belfast. Mark is a leading figure in the field of cancer genomics. Among his many roles, and perhaps pertinent for this session, is his membership of the Clinical Workgroup Executive of the Global Alliance for Genomics and Health, a global initiative to promote sharing of clinical and genomic big data. Following Mark, we will hear from Professor Anna Middleton, who is Principal Staff Scientist and Lead of Social Science and Ethics Group at the Wellcome Trust Sanger Institute in Cambridge. Amongst her many projects and roles, Anna is the creator of the Genome Ethics Study, which is asking what to do with incidental findings from genome research. And lastly, from our speakers, we will hear from Professor Jonathan Montgomery, Professor of Healthcare Law at UCL, who, in addition to his significant academic contribution, has undertaken a number of public service roles, including Chair of the Nuffield Council on Bioethics and Chair of the Health Research Authority. And within the healthcare services, he has served on local NHS boards both in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Professor Mark Lawler to take to the floor.
Thanks very much, Ingrid. Okay, I'd like to thank Tim and Josh for organising what I think has been an excellent session to date. I hope we keep up that standard. We certainly intend to in this session. And as Ingrid said, I want to try and look at just some of the opportunities, but also the challenges that big data presents. And I'm particularly going to concentrate on cancer, but what I'm going to say I think is also very relevant across the disease spectrum. If we look back, sharing data has always been important, leading to new knowledge. This is probably the most famous X-ray in the world, I would guess. But I would ask the question, what about consent? So did Rosalind Franklin actually get give consent to Maurice Wilkins to share that image with James Watson and Francis Crick. Mike's suggestion is he probably didn't, and yet they got the Nobel Prize and she didn't. So, but it is that university down the road, so I suppose you could say, what would you expect? If we spin the helix forward to 2016, and Tim has already alluded to this, the Precision Medicine Initiative, and also in the UK, the 100,000 Genomes Project, all of these initiatives, as well as looking at the whole area of genomics, highlight the need for a knowledge network, in this situation a cancer knowledge network as is envisaged in both President Obama's Precision Medicine Initiative and then also more recently the Cancer Moonshot, which has been led by President Joe Biden. And if we just think of the idea of personal and personalised medicine, which we're talking about it today, Joe Biden at ASCO said it's personal, and it is very personal to him because his son died of brain cancer. And that comes across very much so that it's a personal initiative as well as a collective initiative. And it's important that we have actually leaders who will stand up and say, I want to do something, rather than just saying, oh, well, maybe we should do this, maybe we should do that, maybe we should not be bounded by possibilities. I would suggest the challenges that we face in integrating the data part of personalised medicine are big. I'm going to break them down into three main areas. The first is the technical area, and really it's a technical area, one in relation to scale. We're no longer talking about gigabytes, we're talking about petabytes, we're talking about exabytes, so we're talking about very large amounts of data. And the second thing is that a lot of the databases around the world do not talk to each other. So they're incompatible, and sometimes there are non-standardized pipelines that don't allow them to actually communicate properly and share that information. The third challenge, and probably the challenge that's most difficult in my regard, and certainly we've been working on it very deeply to look at trying to find solutions in the Global Alliance for Genomics and Health, is linking clinical and genomic data. So you generate genomic data, whether it be exome sequencing, whole genome sequencing, how do you link that to clinical data? And it's particularly relevant in cancer because we actually want to look at the patient over the continuum of their treatment and beyond their treatment. And so we need to be able to collect that data and integrate it with the genomic data. The second area is in relation to ethics, and particularly in relation to privacy, but also data protection, but also benefit. So the benefit of the individual, again, getting back to this personalized idea versus the collective benefit. The third challenge, I would say, is cultural. Sad to say, in a lot of the work that's been done up to maybe about 3 or 4 years ago, we've had much more of a selfish silo mentality, where we've actually been holding onto the data rather than actually using the data and sharing it. And really our responsibility is to look much more at sharing the data. And that mentality is brought about by control, being in control of the data from the academic side, gaining the credit, also in relation to IP, and also in relation to failure. We always want to report our successes, but sometimes it's very important to report our failures so that people can learn from that, so we don't have 3 different initiatives all going down the same pathway, which is doomed to fail because we already know it doesn't work because somebody else has already done it. And that's been particularly the case in industry, particularly in diseases like Alzheimer's, etc. As Ingrid said at the start, I'm a member of the Global Alliance for Genomics and Health, and this is an organization that was set up in 2013, and I sometimes call it bringing together the coalition of the willing. And so it's looking at trying to address that data challenge that I've indicated and look to see how we can do something about it. It brings together a lot of different stakeholders, as you can see. As of today, 427 member organizations in 61 countries, so it is truly global in its reach. And as you can see, it also involves quite a lot of different companies and at different organizations and at different scales. So from Amazon to Lucy and Rich Biotech, who are a bioinformatics company based in Bangalore, from the Medical Research Council to Zeta Biosciences, who are a startup in Shanghai. Why do we want to do cancer data sharing? The reason is because no single institution can go it alone, particularly in the context of personalized medicine. You've heard from Tim and others earlier that what we're actually doing with personalised medicine is segmenting out different populations that have particular genomic attributes that then allow us to select those patients for a particular trial or study. And so what that means is that we're actually, even if we start with large numbers of patients, we're actually dealing with quite smaller numbers of patients when we're looking at their personalised genomic profiles. So therefore, in order to learn and also in order to actually involve patients, we need to involve sharing of that data together to gain the maximum value from it for the patient. So what I'm suggesting is we really need to embrace a data-enabled cancer research cooperative that allows us to have uniformity in how we collect the data, allows us to share the data effectively, but also responsibly. And I cannot emphasize that more. And also to look at ways in which it can be open source, so that that data is available to people, so that people can use it, can mine it, can get different indications from it that can actually help to move science forward. We looked then to develop a blueprint for sharing, particularly of cancer clinical genomic data, and we had three main areas that we wanted to concentrate on. The first was the ethical framework, because if you don't have a proper ethical framework in place, it's actually very difficult to do number 2 and 3, and also it makes sense, and also it's the right thing to do. The second, as I said, the challenge in relation to linking longitudinal, clinical and genomic data. And then the third is how do you store the data and how do you make it accessible? So the ethics and regulatory challenges, we really looked at trying to bring together people to work together from all different disciplines on the ethics and security work and regulatory working group. So we could actually look at different solutions and test those solutions and battle harden those solutions so that they actually made sense. And really you're looking at it, it's an ethics harmonization. I don't think you can have every country, every individual in the world following the same ethics exactly, but if you have the same principles and you have a harmonization. And so we published a framework for responsible sharing of genomic and health related data, and embedded within that consent policies, consent tools, privacy and security policies that would help people. And this is a constant engagement. So we put them up on the web and we encourage people to interact with us to say, yes, we want to use them, or no, we think you should include this. And so it's a constant dynamic evolution of an ethics framework. The second then, as I mentioned, is a technical, and one of the technical issues is how do we get different databases to talk to each other? Well, we can actually learn, and multidisciplinary is very important. You can learn from other disciplines. That's why I think multidisciplinary is so important, because you learn. And so, as a community, we've learned from the shipping industry. I don't know whether you know this, but anywhere you go in the world and you have a particular container, you will have a machine that will be able to lift that container and put it in the proper place, and it'll connect into a particular, it's called Docker. And it means that you've no problem that you arrive in a foreign port and you don't know, will they actually be able to deal with this? Because it's the same system throughout the world. And the same thing should, and is starting to apply in the context of genomics. So this idea of a genomic Docker that actually allows this cross-fertilization interaction using the same tools that allows you to actually allow databases to talk to each other. The second thing then is to make it easy for people. And so we've developed freely available, it's available on the web, on the website, the GA4GH website, applied program interface, an API that really allows you to exchange data on both sequence data, sequence variation data, on different platforms. So try and make it as user-friendly as possible, break down infrastructural barriers that may exist, use common web protocols that are used by many individuals throughout the world. So again, make it easy. Don't make it hard. Make it easy for people to actually work together in relation to analyzing and sharing genomic data. And so that we're actually, for both data providers, and I would include the patients in the data providers category, and also the data consumers, you're making it as easy as possible. And then the other thing is, we're saying one of the challenges people face in different parts of the world, in different jurisdictions, is the problem that you're not allowed to move data. So if you can't move data, why don't you move ways in which you can analyze the data. And so what we've done is we've developed a series of computational procedures that you can actually port to the institution or to the collaboration, the cooperative initiative, so that they can actually use that technical tool to help them at source. The data itself doesn't move, but you're able to then analyze that data. So it's a federated system, but a federated system that actually doesn't involve movement of that data across geographical or political jurisdictions. In terms of smaller data items, that can just be satisfied by a internet query. And the most important thing is that we're now seeing significant evidence of patients wanting to share both their genomic and their clinical data. It's increasingly becoming important and sometimes imperative for patients who have very much moved from the passive recipient mode and have moved much more. Alastair also referred to this earlier today in the last session, but moving from that passive recipient mode to the active participant mode. But we need to help, we need to work together, because otherwise patients will get frustrated. Because if they feel we're not working fast enough, and also if they feel we're not actually trying to enable these type of approaches, then they will get frustrated, and their key role as advocates for responsible data sharing will fade. I'm going to give you an example. It's an example from a group of patients who have actually self-aggregated together to drive personalised oncology. ROS1 is a gene that's mutated in a small number of, in small percentages, so approximately 1 to 2%, but in different cancers, including common cancers like lung cancer. There was a realization that this particular mutation could be targeted by a drug called crizotinib, which has been very effective in the treatment of lung cancer patients who have an ALK rearrangement, so a different genetic or genomic chain, but it's also found that this particular patient with the ROS1 mutation also respond to this drug. This led to a self-aggregation of a group of patients online. They call themselves the ROS1ers. 120 patients from 11 countries all came together, self-aggregated online within 3 months. And I mean throughout the world, Bangladesh, Italy, USA, Canada, so various different continents as well. So not all in one country, for example. Proactively collecting, sharing both biospecimens and also genomic data. And this provides a potential platform then to allow discoveries to be translated in real time. And that's what the patients require. Tim said it earlier, Alastair said as well. There's no point in having approaches that actually take so long to actually get to the patient, but by the time they got to the patient, it is of no use. We really need to act in real time. So just to sort of summarize, what I'm suggesting is we really need to adopt much more this idea of the coalition of the willing and look at how we can share data. Yes, there are challenges, yes, there are problems, and I haven't in any way underestimated them. But just because there are problems doesn't mean that we can't work together to try and overcome these problems and find solutions. I'm suggesting we need to move from this closed, selfish silo type culture that has been predicated both at the academic and the industry side from holding the data in and using it for ourselves, because it really is the data, a lot of it is funded through public bodies, so therefore it should be available much more widely. So from this selfish silo mentality to an open source collaborative culture. So I would suggest no can do is not the way we should work, but much more a yes we can culture. The editor of the New England Journal of Medicine suggested that people who use data and secondary use data are data parasites or research parasites. I'm going to stand up for the data parasites and say data parasites rule okay. And just to end, what I'm suggesting we should try to do is create a global informatics ecosystem where personalized oncology can transition from cancer diagnosis through molecular discovery to patient recovery. And that should be our common goal. If we don't, and if we don't take the opportunity, with the various different caveats that I've mentioned, I would suggest that rather than shooting for the moon, the data cloud that is present on the horizon may cause us to fly too near the sun. Thank you very much.